have to the left my 2003 Mustang SVT Cobra, and to the right we have a 2002 Mustang GT. And the reason why I have a Mustang GT, and specifically this Mustang GT, is because this car, it is completely original. Give a little bit more. Yeah. And it has two things that are not original, and I'm gonna show you what they are. But this car is completely original, and believe it or not, it has over 200,000 miles right there. My car, 41,000. This car, over 200,000 miles. But it is in pristine condition, and we're gonna see the difference between the 03 and 04 Cobra in person versus your standard Mustang GT. So we're gonna start the video up front, and the first thing that we could see, we're gonna look at the Cobra. We're gonna see the Cobra has a different bumper compared to the one found on the Mustang GT. Now, the Cobra has a lower bumper and has fog lights, round fog lights up front, and it has a bigger opening that you can see right there, and that was fitted to fit the heat exchanger for the supercharger for the 2003 and 04 Mustang Cobra. You see that opening right there versus this opening on the Mustang GT, and that is because this car doesn't have anything behind that bumper, where the Cobra has a heat exchanger for the supercharger. It also has a smaller lip. This car, like I said, one of the things that it has aftermarket is it has an 03 and 04 Mustang Mach 1 front splitter. You can see it right there. But other than that, it's all original. So we see that the bumper is different up front. Another thing, the 03 and 04 Cobras, they had two openings up here on the front. One was for the fog light, and the other one was for braking ducts. Now, the ducts were never installed on these cars. All right, let's cover the Mustang GT hood first. This was the same hood introduced in 1999, and it has, yes, a hood scoop. Now, unfortunately, on the Mustang GT, that hood scoop was non-functional. The air doesn't actually go anywhere. See right there. It does, I gotta give it to them, it does look cool, and it does make this car look aggressive from the front. So we're gonna take a look at the 03 and 04 Cobra. Now we could see the lines are kind of similar compared to the ones on the Mustang GT. Instead of having a hood scoop, this car has heat extractors. So you see these openings right here. This is actually to let that hot air out of it, because these motors are supercharged and they produce a ton of heat. So you want to extract that heat. So we could see both hoods. Now, both of the headlights are exactly the same headlights. The 03 04 Cobra and the Mustang GT, they have exactly the same headlights. Now, if we take a closer look to the grille, you can see that this grille, it's open. Could actually fit your hand, and I have a snake up front. Now, believe it or not, the Mustang Cobra did not come with a snake from the factory. It came with a running horse, but a lot of owners, they swap out the running horse and they put a snake. Now we could see that this has a honeycomb right here on the grille. Actually, it does look good. And we have the pony with the chrome coral, and it actually, I like it. You know, the Mach 1 didn't have this from the factory, but this is an original Mustang GT, and this is what Ford wanted to come out with, and that's what they did. So let's recap. The hood is different, the front grille is different, the bumper is the main giveaway for the 03 and 04 Cobra. This has the same bumper as the one that you found on the Mach 1 and the Mustang V6. The only difference is that this car came with fog lights right there. That's a giveaway for the Mustang GT. Alright guys, so now we're gonna be moving to the side, and the first thing that calls our attention is the rims. Now this car does have not the factory rims, and the reason was that this car had an issue where it actually hit a curb. So the owner decided to replace the rims with the factory style rims, and you could tell that it's not factory because it has the American muscle center caps. So moving on to the Cobra, we could see that the rims, this car does have the original SVT Mustang rims. They're both 17s. These are bullets, and these are specific 03 and 04 Cobra rims, 5-spoke. So the owner was nice enough and he brought me the center cap that should have been here, but unfortunately this is actually too big and it doesn't fit. But this is what it should have come from the factory. If we switch to the Cobra, now the Cobra has an interesting mix. So these are Brembo rotors from the factory with PBR dual piston calipers from the factory. You could also give away that the Cobra, it says the brakes are gonna say Cobra. You can see the dual pistons. Now for the GT, I don't see the dual piston, so I am thinking that this is a single piston. A little bit smaller. Cobras are a little bit bigger. And yep, that is the brake and the rims. Another thing, you see the wheel gap here, and this is because this car is completely original. It has the exactly same wheel gap that this car came from the factory. You see my Cobra, it's lower with lowering springs. So moving on to the side, we have the obvious, we have the GT badge on the side, and that's gonna be a giveaway for the new Edge Mustang GT. That was the original badge that this car came from the factory. For the Cobra, yes, it did come from the factory with the snake on the side. That is 100% original from the factory. Okay, now if we look up here, the mirrors on the 03 and 04 Cobra, they're factory painted to match the exterior color of the car. So these are factory painted, and on the GT they're not. They're just gonna be black plastic mirrors that they were the same on the Mustang V6 and I believe the Mustang Mach 1 as well. Now if you guys have good eye, you're gonna notice that this lower panel is different in the Mustang GT compared to the one found on the Mustang Cobra. This one is gonna have a lip. It's gonna come out to the side a little bit, where the 03 Cobra, they went with the clean design. So it's gonna be flush, and that's gonna be another giveaway compared to the one on the Mustang GT and 03 and 04 Cobra. Moving on to the side, they're pretty much same car, but when we get to the rear side scoops of the car, there's something different. There's something different between that side scoop.
That's honeycombed like up here. What's this? Is this a hole?
This very good.
Does that have
yep, very good. So this has the honeycomb to match the front grille, and right here the 03 and 04 Cobra, they're gonna have horizontal lines, and that is gonna be to match the same lines that come on the heat extractor. Alright guys, so now we're gonna be moving on to the back, and yeah, unfortunately I got blessed by a bird right there, unfortunately or fortunately. So if we could see the spoiler on the Mustang GT, it is different than the one found on the 03 and 04 Cobras. See it right there. Now I don't know the story for this original spoiler. I know it was offered on the Mustang V6 as an option. This spoiler was actually wind tunnel powered by NASCAR, and it actually supposed to create downforce to keep the back of the 03 and 04 Cobra planted on their high speed. Originally they wanted to be about an inch shorter than what it is actually, but when they were wind tunnel this spoiler, actually the wind tunnel was telling them they needed to go an inch high. So that's why you see it right there. So another giveaway is that the GT is gonna have the GT badge right here, and the bumper is gonna be shared with the Mustang V6. The only exception really is gonna be an extra exhaust cutout, actually 2 exhaust cutouts for the exhaust tips, and it's gonna say Mustang on the back. It's not gonna say Mustang GT, it's just gonna say Mustang. Now let's look at the 03 and 04 Cobra rear bumper. You can see it's a little bit, if we look at them together, the 03 and 04 Cobra is gonna be a little bit lower, the bumper. It's gonna have this black bottom part, actually looks like a diffuser, and it's gonna obviously have the cutouts for the exhaust, and it's gonna say Cobra. It's gonna say on the back, it's gonna have the SVT badge on the back. Same placement as the one on the Mustang GT, but it's gonna say SVT. Both cars are gonna have the Ford logo. On the passenger seat on the rear side, we're gonna speak about something that makes the Cobra unique and something that you could actually recognize the car when you're driving. So if we look underneath the car, we could actually see the exhaust hanging from the bottom of the car, and that is because this car came with an IRS, or independent rear suspension, and actually instead of the exhaust going over and under, they're gonna come from the bottom and they're gonna meet right there, and you're gonna be able to see it when you're driving, because this car came with an IRS, independent rear suspension. Now if we look at the Mustang GT, you're not gonna see the exhaust hanging from the bottom. You're only gonna see the gas tank and no exhaust, because this car came equipped with a solid rear axle, and actually the exhaust is gonna go over the axle and come back. On the Cobra, you can see that it's gonna come underneath the IRS, and then it's gonna come up top. So that's another difference between the Mustang GT and the 03 and 04 Cobra. And I almost forgot, but I didn't forget. So the Mustang GT came with 245 17s, 245 width, and the Cobra came with 275 on the width. And one thing that was interesting when they were developing these cars, the 03 and 04 Cobras, they wanted to make room for the 275 on the back. They actually went ahead and they cut a part of the subframe just to fit those tires. Alright guys, so now we're gonna step on the interior first of all of the Mustang GT. And as soon as we pop the door, we can see that this has the light brown interior. This is a little bit different color, but the door fairly is in good shape. Now the seats though, they're not in the best shape, and that is, like I said, this car has 220,000 miles. So a lot of driving has been done on these seats. The owners, we're gonna get new seats for this car, and we're gonna bring it back. This car does have an automatic transmission. If it will be a stick shift, it will be a 5-speed manual. You can see the dashboard, it says Mustang. Now we have a little crack right here. This car has been sitting on the sun, but really nice shape. So if we look at the steering wheel, we have the running pony. We have kind of like a single wrap on the steering wheel. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I'm going to show you a difference with the 03 and 04 Cobra. Now I want to bring your attention to the cluster, and we could see on the Mustang GT we have 5,800 RPMs red line. So we have the fuel gauge right here, we have the temperature, we have the voltmeter right there, and we have oil pressure. 150 mile speedo and about 5,800 RPMs. 60D disc changer, AC, regular Mustang controls, back seat looks fairly new. Okay, open up the Cobra. We can see all Cobras came with a black interior, so you're gonna see everything is going to be black. Now this car only has 41,000 miles, so it's pretty much brand new. You can see the doors are in really nice shape. Now another thing that calls your attention is gonna be the seats. These were specific 03 and 04 Cobra seats with sway inserts in the middle. This is actually sway, kind of like an Alcantara type of leather, if you want to say. You can see the Cobra logo. So now we're gonna sit on the seats. The seats on the Cobra, they're gonna be very the bolstering is one thing that as soon as you sit down, you're gonna be able to feel. So if we look at the layout of the Mustang Cobra, it's pretty much the same as the one found on the Mustang GT. If we come here to the middle, you can see the AC vents up here, same deal. 6 CD changer. Now, 03 and 04 Cobras only came with a 6-speed manual T56. This transmission only came on the 03 04 Cobra. The GTs had a manual 5-speed. If we look at the steering wheel, we can see instead of a horse, we have the Cobra emblem. And what I was talking about, the wrapping, you can see the Cobra has double wrappings, so it's a little bit thicker compared to the one found on the Mustang GT. If we look at the gauges on the 03 Cobra, we're gonna have white gauges, and they're gonna be illuminating green accent. It looks beautiful, honestly, at nighttime. It looks very bright. So we could see we have gas, temperature, 160 miles speedo. We have 6,500 RPM red light. We have a boost gauge instead of a battery voltage meter, and we have your oil pressure right here. The back seats have the same theme as the front seats with the suede inserts. They look pretty much brand new. Okay guys, so first of all, let's check out the Mustang GT power plant. So like I said, this car is completely original. You can see the intake air box, it's 100% original. And what we're dealing right here, it's with a 2 valve. And what I refer to valve is that it has 2 valves per cylinder, one intake, one exhaust. Obviously it's a VA 4.6. Now these motors have an output of 260 horsepower and about 302 pound-feet of torque. This car is completely original. You can see the running pony up top, very cool. These motors, they're bulletproof. As long as you change the oil, as long as you keep it up, they could last you forever. 400,000 miles, no problem. These motors are a workhorse. You'll see them on Crown Victorias, you'll see them in Grand Marquis, you'll see them in everything, even F-150s of the era. And you can see just these things just run forever. Now power wise, do these motors make good power? Yes and no. So let's say for example you throw a few buttons like headers, exhaust and intake, and you're probably gonna be around 250, 260 to the wheels. Not bad for this car that only weighs about 3,300 pounds. If you decide to throw a supercharger here, now things get a little bit more interesting. You could push 400 up to 450 to the wheels in order to be safe. The weak link right here is gonna be your connecting rods. They're not forged like the whole 304 Cobra, so you're gonna be power limit to about 450 real wheel horsepower, which honestly is plenty to have fun on the streets. These cars will do 0 to 60 according to Motor Trend back in '99, about 5.5 seconds to 6 seconds. And they'll run the quarter mile around 14 seconds to 14.2, 14.4 on that range, close around 98 to 100 miles per hour. Depends on the testing, depending on condition. So that is a healthy number, and especially really impressive for the time. You know, it wasn't as fast as the Camaro with the LS1, but it was fast enough. And the owner of this car actually bought this car brand new back in 2002. He's the original owner. This car has never been sold to anyone else. He's telling me he loved this car, and he's telling me that he'll never sell this car because he's created so many memories with this car. Now we saw the GT, let's take a look at the 03 and 04 Cobra motor. As soon as we look at it, we could see the biggest thing that calls your attention is obviously, you know, this supercharger in the middle. And this car has 4 valves per cylinder, so each cylinder is gonna have 2 intake valve and 2 exhaust valve. Another big difference is gonna be 2 camshaft, where the GT had 1 camshaft per cylinder head. This is gonna have 2 camshaft, 1 for intake and 1 for exhaust. So, you know, this engine is a lot more fancy, a lot more complicated to run, to get in timing, but it does make more power because of that. And then on top, the 03 and 04 Cobra was the first Mustang ever to come with a supercharger from the factory. So this car is not 100% original, but it is pretty close to. We see here we have the factory airbox with an open cone, and this, believe it or not, is gonna give you some horsepower. And up here, the previous owner of this car changed the upper pulley, and by making it smaller, it's gonna make that supercharger spin faster, and that's gonna create more boost. More boost equals more power. This right here might call your attention, and this is the expansion tank. This is a water tank for the supercharger. So another thing, we're dealing with a 4.6 liter. Okay, this motors, another difference with the Mustang GT is that these motors were hand built. You can see the plaque right here. They were hand built by SVT, Special Vehicle Team. And what's cool is when they were done, each engineer assembled this motor, they would put their name right there. Cool. Yeah. Cool. You see 4.6 4-valve Mustang Cobra, and that is something that was very exotic for the era. You will only see it on Ferraris, you will only see it on Porsche, and you know, high-end Mercedes-Benz like AMGs. And for Ford to have this was a big deal for the era. Yeah, very cool. This car's from the factory. Obviously, this one is pushing a little bit more power. They were said to have 390 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. So if you remember, the GT was 260, 302. This was 390. But believe it or not, these cars were underrated. So a lot of these cars, when they were put into the dyno, they were actually dyno between 360 to 390 to the wheels. So actually this motor was really not making 390 horsepower. This motor was actually making between 420 to 450 to the crankshaft. Yes, this motor that you see from the factory, about 400, which it was bananas for 2003. That was a lot of power. Back then, the Viper, I believe, was only making 450 horsepower. And this thing at $33,000 was making as much power. So 0 to 60, this car was 4.5 according to Motor Trend, and the quarter mile will fly by at 12.9 seconds at 111 miles per hour. Really incredible for the time, for the era. This car was really fast for its time. And still to this day, with the mods that he has currently, pushing around 460 real wheel horsepower. So to the motor, that's about 520 horsepower to the motor, which is incredible for just a filter, a pulley, exhaust, and a tune. So that's the only thing that this car has power wise, but it does make about 100 more horsepower to the wheels than what it came with the factory. So there you guys have it, Mustang Cobra motor, Mustang GT. Let's get a shot of both hoods open. And that's a sight that you're not gonna see every day. You're not gonna see a new Mustang GT and a 03 and 04 Cobra.